Ansel Adams was a very famous landscape photographer, like we talked about. He's best known for his works out in the western part of the United States, especially Yellowstone National Park. His work was used to convince the government to sanction these areas as national preserves, and so he's really important. But he's most famous for his black and white shots and the great, great drama he achieves through the darkest blacks and the lightest lights in his photographs, the great contrast between light and dark. He achieved that through burning and dodging, which he originally did in the darkroom by holding objects over the negative to protect them from being exposed, or purposely exposing only little parts of the negative to make them seem even brighter. So we have a way to simulate the same technique in Photoshop. So let's go into Photoshop now and practice some burning and dodging. The first thing you want to do is import a photo by using File. And I've imported a picture of my husband and I hiking up at Watkins Glen in New York because I thought it would make a good example of a landscape for you to look at. But when you import it, it's probably not going to be big enough to fill the screen, and it's going to be hard for you to see things. So I like to go into View and then select Full Screen, and it should look like this. That's better. Now, we're largely working in the black and white when we're burning and dodging, so let's change this photo to black and white. In this slide, you can see the drop-down menus we used to find the hue and saturation adjustment to the image. So we're first going to go into Image, then select Adjustments, and then go to Hue and Saturation. Now, there are other ways to make black and white as well, but this is the method that I like to use, and we'll just do this together for now. Once you hit Hue and Saturation, this is the dialog window that's going to come up. It gives you 3 slider bars that you can choose from: Hue, Saturation, and Lightness. And for the one that we want for this one to turn it black and white is Saturation, and your slider usually starts out in the middle of your bar, and you just want to move it all the way to the left to get black and white. Now you could sort of fool around with lightness here if you wanted to make the photo lighter and darker, but that's an adjustment that actually works a little better under contrast, so let's leave that alone for right now. Now we've already used some of the tools up and down the left-hand side of Photoshop, but for today we're going to concentrate on the burning and dodging tool, which is right down here in the corner, about 2/3 of the way down. It is a circle with a long sort of dowel sticking out of it, and you may not have that exact icon. If you put your finger over that spot, those 3 choices will come up: Dodge Tool, Burn Tool, or Smudge Tool. So your screen will show whatever the person before you may have left there. For now, we're going to work on the Dodge tool. So once you get those 3 to show up, make sure that your Dodge tool is selected. And now we're going to get ready to make things lighter. Dodging things makes them lighter. If you're burning things, it makes them darker, which makes sense. If you burn a piece of toast, it gets darker, right? So we're going to start with dodging, and we're going to make some of these places in the rocks lighter because I can see more detail if I lighten some of these to see the texture. So that's going to be our focus for our dodging, those areas right there. Once you have selected the Dodge tool, you want to come up to this part of your screen and click on that, and here's where you control the size of your Dodge tool, how much gets dodged each time you swipe over the photo. It can be a lot or it can be a little depending on how you set the hardness and the size of the brush that you're using for dodging. There are some samples shown there for you. You can click on those too if you want a softer edge or a harder edge or a different kind of brush. For the most part, I just use a circle, and I've got my circle pretty large because I'm going to be dodging some pretty big areas here in these rocks to make them lighter so I can see more detail. Notice in this particular setting, I don't have it lightening very quickly because my hardness is very low. And I also only have about 50% exposure. That allows me to work sort of slowly and gradually, but you may want something stronger for more dramatic effects right off the bat. Okay, now we're ready to start dodging here. I am sort of getting oriented with my cursor, looking at the size of my Dodge tool to make sure I like it. And now I'm going to start gently swiping back over the rocks. I'm holding my finger down on the cursor on the mouse as I go back and forth over the areas that I want to lighten. And they're lightening very, very gently because my exposure is so low. Set them over here, come on the other side, do the same thing back and forth until I can kind of see some of that texture emerging that was hidden in the shadows before. Now look what happens if I hold my cursor for a long time over the same spot in the rock. It gets sort of a really, really bright spot, which you got to be careful. It can be good, it can be bad, it might look a little bit unnatural. And if it does, that's no big deal. You just go back up here to edit, click on it, go down and do undo, and it'll take off everything from the last time you pushed your finger down on the cursor. Add some more on this side. You can also use a step backward in the edit mode. Okay, good enough. Now we're going to switch back from dodging to burning. I'm going to make things darker now. Select the burn tool. I'm going to come down here on these rocks and increase some of their shadows to make them look a little bit richer. Increase some of that contrast, that beautiful dark and beautiful light contrast that Ansel Adams did so wonderfully. Get some of the shadows in the trees to come out there. I really liked the effect on that rock. I'm going to do a little bit more to sort of blend it in there. I like that effect. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. Let's go to the next slide. Here you can see the picture, its final effect. I did crop my husband out of the left-hand side of the picture, all but his big toe. For the sake of balance, I didn't want to crop any closer to the wall, and I would probably clone stamp his toe out of there, but you can see the sort of silvery effect of the light now that we've you know, dodged a little bit into those rocks and burned a little bit on the wall there beside the path, and it does look an awful lot like the kind of photo that Ansel Adams would have taken. So try some burning and dodging with your black and white landscape photos and see what you can do.